Okay, so Mrgirl has released an article called My Free Speech Adventures. It goes over all of his various bans, exiles, punishments for saying what he thinks, for speaking his mind. All the times he's martyred himself for a cause. So we're going to read through it. It's quite long. And there's some long videos in it as well, I believe. Like it's full hour-long police interview from when he got suspended from university is in here. So we're going to listen to that. All right, so let's start. Amherst Regional High School. I grew up in the progressive town of Amherst, Massachusetts. To give you an idea of the political temperature, my mother divorced my father in 1995 and became a lesbian. No one made fun of me for it. Yes, my mother's wife would pick me up from school, adopted greyhound in tow, and zero jokes were made. When I was in high school, a wave of outrage about Latin American stereotypes led to last-minute cancellation of the senior performance of West Side Story. You know what play the community had no issue with? The vagina monologues. When I was 15, I asked the editor-in-chief of a high school paper to bring me on as a columnist. He refused, but encouraged me to start my own thing. I took his advice, and in 2001, I began self-publishing a single-page newsletter called The Crux. That first year, I wrote about teen dating and social castes, the divines and the clammies. I critiqued my health teacher's anti-porn messaging. I slammed an anti-racist Asian culture assembly I was forced to attend, writing, "If Asian women really don't like sex, then how come there's so many Asians?" I wanted my newsletter to be anonymous, as I'm a shy person, so I clandestinely placed my papers next to other student publications and newsletters. The school staff threw them in the trash. It seems banal and insignificant, but this was my first encounter with government censorship. With government censorship? Oh yeah, I suppose so, I guess. If there's a designated shelf or bulletin board for student media, public school employees can't just throw some of it out because they don't like what it says. I found some courage and started distributing the crux, in the lunchroom, walking from table to table handing out 500 copies per issue. The lunchroom staff, along with some angry teachers, still snapped up any unattended copies. But their efforts to shut down my paper were otherwise thwarted. That is, until I released issue 5, which earned me a week-long suspension. Let's give this a read. My response to Mr. Myers' controversial hobby of molesting children? Let's go! I'm going to break up with him. And had I known he was a child molester, I never would have gone out with him in the first place. And to all the people who signed that letter to him, with the bit about, "We support you no matter what," haha. I can see you now on the cross-country team. Might make Nick and Jason think that all the students experience frequent urges to expose their nipples, but this is hardly the case. I don't know who I'm madder at. Gus Sayer or the previous... it's hard to get it at the right... Okay, here we go. Gus Sayer or the previous victims who declined to press charges. Whether or not they still thought that Uncle Stephen was a saint, it would have been nice if it had occurred to them that maybe high school principal and pedophile weren't the two best jobs to be working simultaneously. As for Gus Sayer, he should have told DSS as soon as he received the mother's complaint, or he shouldn't have been quite so wrong. Speaking of incompetence at the Amherst school system, I'm going to dabble in the topic of race relations. Black people have an unfair advantage over the non-white races in Amherst. They have a well-respected representative, who in Amherst, unfortunately, has been sickly transformed into a meaningless mascot. The closest thing to Latin American people have to Martin Luther King is the Taco Bell Chihuahua. White American society needs a brilliant spokesperson for a race to appear before it will start to think about not making life a living hell for the members of that race. Mr. Fuentes? It's unsurprising that Dr. King has been unmatched in America in his heroism. He was a 1 in a billion. This is not to say that white society has totally abandoned its goal of creating misery for black people, but blacks have had a head start on the other non-whites. For example, the only thing I learned about Cambodia in elementary school is that you can buy a hand grenade there for $1.50. Amherst is all about celebrating diversity, but what diversity are they referring to? The only diversity that has any relevance in day-to-day life is this. White people have peach or pink-coloured skin and big eyes and thin lips. East Asian people have tan skin and squinty eyes and thinner lips. and black people have dark brown skin and big eyes and big lips. That's it. Jesus Christ. The Amherst school system constantly tries to close cultural gap between white and non-white students by dragging everyone to Cambodian New Year celebrations, by making everyone read books about slavery and listen to African music. White kids don't need to know what African music sounds like, or what day Cambodians celebrate their New Year, or what slavery was like. Kids with light tan skin need to know what it's like to be a kid with brown skin walking into a convenience store. Oppression doesn't happen because white people don't know what day Kwanzaa is. Oppression is when one group says to another, "We hate you because you look funny, and we're going to K you because it's economically advantageous to us." The reason I'm talking about all this is that something happened in my math class a couple weeks ago. People were talking about the fights that have been breaking out in school recently, and one by one, the students in my class began to talk about how it was the Puerto Rican kids' fault. Not specific kids, just the Puerto Ricans. One student pointed out that most of them aren't from Puerto Rico, and I realized that in much of my maths class, Puerto Rican means light brown. It was surreal. I'm positive that the nature of the discussion would have been very different had there been a single Latin American student in my class. Things began to escalate, and I thought of the words Puerto Rican problem. I leaned over to my friend and said in a German accent, I don't know if I can do the German accent, "I think I have a solution to this problem." The conversation I was witnessing was more informative than any of the readings for the Holocaust. One student said that the real problem was how some of the kids in the main hall tried to act like they're in a ghetto, which means they are acting scary. Dark-skinned kids and light-skinned kids are being forced into roles by each other. The actions of the dark-skinned kids who are scared are much more tangible than the actions of the light-skinned kids who are scared. At our school, when dark-skinned kids feel defensive, it manifests itself in a form of anger. Rap, baggy clothes, scowling. All of this is scary, which is of course the point. It's not as scary as white kids. I'm white, of course. I assume that you could tell by the way I avoided offering insight as to what it's like to be non-white. I'm saying this because I don't want anyone to think that I'm speaking out of order. This is a declaration of the fact I'm still speaking as a white. And as a white, even I find it kind of chilling to see crowds of white kids with smug little expressions that say, "The whole country is on my side," and this is what allows me to relax around dark people. When we act on our fears, we ruin everything for everyone. It's understandable, of course. How many bees have to sting you before you start being afraid of bees? The problem is that these aren't bugs, and it messes with society to live defensively around people because they look different. Actually, scratch everything I've said before this paragraph. Except the stuff about Uncle Stephen. That's so goddamn funny. As good-natured as my suggestions are, if anyone listens to them, which I now hope to God they won't, it's going to make for a boring last trimester. Let's see who would have won if we'd been allowed to put on that play. The Sharks or the Jets. 3 important things to think about. Uncle Stephen, Uncle Jason, Uncle Nick. Okay. The charge? Sexual harassment and racism. According to the school administrators, I had sexually harassed our recently resigned principal by making fun of him for being a self-admitted child molester. You can learn more about him and his 28 accusers here. This is Uncle Stephen, I guess. Maya said that he molested underage boys and was sexually attracted to boys aged 14 to 16. Okay. I get the message there. The short version is he goes from community to community, molesting boys and facing few repercussions, and has been doing so for 50 years. A freshman at my high school alleged that Mr. Myers had invited him over to hang out in the hot tub, and Mr. Myers resigned under pressure from the school board. There was an outpouring of support from both students and staff, but not from me, demanding that Mr. Myers be allowed to keep his job. The Santa Cruz Police Department, whom Myers had been investigated by, caught wind of the allegations and sent a report containing his admissions of molestation to our local paper. Jesus, the Daily Hampshire Gazette. I was angry. In my newspaper, I bitterly mocked Myers, the school administrators, and the 2 students who had naively led a crusade to get him reinstated. I wrote, "My response to Mr. Myers' controversial hobby of molesting children? I'm going to break up with him, and had I known he was a child molester, I never would have gone out with him in the first place." Yes, according to the superintendent, whom I'd also criticised by name, This was me sexually harassing our disgraced child molester ex-principal. The other justification for the suspension was racism. Reading issue 5 now, I'm surprised at my own white guilt and how much I was still towing the progressive line. But to the administrators, making fun of the school's handling of race was the same as being racist. Of course, a state school can't legally suspend the student for merely having or expressing racist beliefs anyway. The dean of students, a very light-skinned black woman, called me into her office and said, "You don't know anything about racism because you're white." While he was suspending me, one of the acting co-principals, filling the recently vacated position, smugly asked me what my black friends thought of my newsletter. I replied, "I don't have any black friends," and stared at him, challenging him to reconsider whether my all-white friend group was in spite or because of the school's relentless diversity programming. A Puerto Rican guidance counselor called my father to warn him that she had overheard some students in Spanish discussing in Spanish, following me home and killing me. She explained to them that my piece was satirical and not meant as an insult to Latinos, which I accepted. I was still terrified, and as a result, I lost the ability to pee in public urinals permanently. I can stand there just fine, but for the life of me, nothing will come out. That's so real. Dude, this is the realest motherfucker in the world. Holy shit. The editor-in-chief of the school newspaper, who by now recognized that he'd dodged a bullet by refusing to give me a column, contacted the ACLU on my behalf. A lawyer named Bill Newman wrote the school a letter warning them that they were infringing on my First Amendment rights and urging them to back down. They did. My suspension was retroactively overturned, and I continued to publish the crux without incident. That is, until issue 8, in which I professed my gay love for my friend Matt. I invited him to roleplay as Mr. Myers and a helpless boy, or the acting principal and his wife. Paradoxically, my choking declaration of love came after some sincere reflections about sexism in pornography, right around the time when teens first gained access to hardcore porn. So I've heard most of these stories before, but it's good to have them all collected in one place, just from watching his content. When I took the class about the portrayal of women in books, literature, I was dismayed to find out it was more of a novel reading class and less of a picture book class. We also had discussions. Most of these discussions were about sexism. Sexism has always played a large role in my life, what with my wife beating relatives and my feminist lesbian mother, who told me that I'm going to mistreat women when I grow up. Sexism is everywhere, but it can be found in its rawest form in pornography. For those of you who don't have access to pornography at home, here's what happens. First, the woman performs oral sex on the man while he grabs her hair and pulls her up and down by it. Then the man enters the woman and pumps away inside of her for a wonderfully long time. Finally, the woman pretends to have an orgasm, and the man tops the whole thing off by ejaculating into the woman's face. This is sexist because most women don't have the ability to ejaculate back, and the ones who do rarely get a chance to, and it's never onto the man's face. We can all agree that when we see a pornographic video, we are usually exposed to sexism. Unfortunately, a lot of people miss half of the reason it's sexist. One part of it is the same reason that most ads contain negative portrayals of women. They are objectified. This is bad because it happens every time. The part that people miss is the portrayal of men. In pornography, men are portrayed in just the opposite way of women, and it is equally important. Men are never objectified. Just as women have a neglected need to feel powerful, men have a neglected need to feel powerless. I mean, what man doesn't secretly want to be dressed up as a Barbie and hosed down with pink lemonade? It's not inherently sexist to beat your wife. It's just mean. What makes it more than mean is the fact that most women are smaller and they rarely beat their husbands. Of course, husband beatings are severely underreported because everyone knows that if your wife beat you up, you're a total pussy. If both kinds of domestic violence happened equally often and the beatings were equally severe, there would be nothing sexist about beating your wife. If men were stupid bimbos in movies as often as women, and women were smart main characters as often as men, none of it would matter. When women are objectified in media, it teaches little girls to feel powerless and hide their emotions. This is reinforced when they notice that nobody cares about how they feel. When men are always portrayed in positions of power, especially in sex, it teaches little boys to always feel powerful. And if they think no one cares about how they feel, they make them care. This isn't some weird attempt to make everyone feel bad for wife beaters and child abusers, but it's uplifting to think that abusive men don't like the way things are either, and it makes change seem much easier. Speaking of change, I've undergone a change of my own. Well, it all happened about a week ago. I woke up with a start and looked around to see that it was still dark outside. Something was on my mind, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. Thinking that I perhaps needed to relieve myself, I put on my Minnie Mouse slippers and padded down the hallway to the bathroom. When I stepped in and turned on the light, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. My feet stopped, and I saw that there was a queer glint in my eye. I had an epiphany. Gazing at my wondrously hairy chest and my shapely belly button, I asked myself a question. Am I gay? But after a moment's thought, I looked into my own bleary, bloodshot eyes and said, yes. Yes, I am gay. I'm gayer than Big Bird, and that's not all. I have a crush. Who you ask? Matthew Redacted. That's right, I'm gay for you, Matt. Remember how when all of our friends would high-five, I always insisted that you and I bunny kiss? Remember how I always laughed at your jokes, even when they weren't funny at all? Remember how I always take the CD out of my CD player when I'm not using it? Okay. Remember when I was you for Halloween? Remember how I always lick my lips seductively? Remember how I always lick your lips seductively? Remember how I always do my homework? Remember how I read the graphic? Remember how I wear glasses? Remember that I like Sprite? Remember that I listen to Nelly? Remember how I'm on the cross-country team? If you'd paid closer attention, you'd have noticed that I went gay some time ago. You drove me to it, Matt, with your mysterious dark eyes and your pretty brown hair, your extra hairy legs and your buttermilk thighs, your movie star attitude and picky eating habits, your biblical name, and how cute and oblivious your parents are when they let us have sleepovers. You're charming enough to turn any straight man gay and any lesbian straight. Of course, I myself was a little more susceptible than most people, having been raised gay. Now the ball's in your court, Matt. Just give me some sign. Whether you want to write me a note, or just cut straight to the kinky, you be Mr. Myers, and I'll be the helpless adolescent boy. Sex. Okay. I need you to take this really seriously, and understand how much I want you. I want to be Poland, and I want you to be the Nazis. I want to be my ex-girlfriend, and I want you to be her new boyfriend. I want to be Mrs. Whaley, and I want you to be Mr. Whaley. I want to be Miss Hannigan's mouth, and I want you to be Mr. Hannigan's toothbrush. Miss Hannigan's toothbrush. I want to be C-3PO, and I want you to be R2-D2. Matt, what I'm saying is I think you and I should get together and seriously ruin some condoms. Just put some thought into it. I hope this doesn't mean things are going to be weird between us. 3 important things to think about. Pro-choice or pro-coat hanger? I'm actually gay. Does anyone want to admit that they're on the cross-country team? I was suspended again, this time for obscenity. The acting co-principals naively assumed my parents wanted to rein me in and invited them to the meeting. My father called Mr. Whaley a fucking Nazi and refused to leave until he called the police. War of words rages at high school. Amherst. High school principal William Whaley has problems with the way senior Max Karson expresses himself. Meanwhile, the student's father says he's less thrilled with the principal's treatment of his son. Whaley, who shares interim principal duties at Amherst Pelham Regional High School with Kathleen Hannigan, suspended Karson for the 3rd time last week after the school distributed November issue of The Crux, his newsletter for fellow students. Soon after, Whaley summoned police to remove the boy's father, Michael Karson, from his office after the elder Karson called him a Nazi. Michael Karson said, Max Karson, 17, first crossed swords with the administration last year when he distributed an issue of The Crux, in which he made remarks about Hispanic leaders that some found offensive. In September, he printed another issue that explored the topic of pornography in graphic language and made sexual references to Whaley and Hannigan. In both cases, the suspensions were lifted after a lawyer with the American Civil Liberties Union intervened. The brouhaha over free speech prompted the school committee to adopt language for the student handbook designed to add... Okay. The ACLU wrote the school another letter, this time pointing out my newsletter hadn't come close to meeting the legal definition of obscenity. It would have to be legitimately pornographic and also lack social, political, and artistic value. The school once again caved and retroactively reversed my suspension. This would happen twice more in my senior year, in November and December of 2002. The November suspension was for writing about how much I masturbate, and the December suspension was for an issue that ended with "fuck you, mom." Student publisher in hot water again. Max Karson poured his heart out in the latest issue of The Crux, but the bile that came with it has earned him a 4th suspension from his classes at Amherst Regional High School. Karson, a senior at the school, had been engaged in an ongoing battle with the school administration over free speech rights for students. He was suspended last year when he distributed an issue of his self-produced underground newspaper, The Crux, containing remarks about Hispanic leaders which some found offensive. This year, Karson, 17, received 2 more suspensions, after he handed out issues that dealt with pornography and masturbation. The latest flare-up occurred after Karson distributed the December issue of The Crux, a sometimes angry meditation on the relative responsibilities of parents and their children, which ends with him directing a common 4-letter expletive at his mother. According to acting co-principal William Whaley, such language violates a section in the Student Code of Conduct that prohibits profanity on the school grounds. I think it's pretty inappropriate for students to use profanity in school, he said yesterday, noting other students have been suspended for verbal violations. Jesus. Profanity is not allowed, said Worley. The most important thing to me is that it's clearly inappropriate. Cool. Loser. Like the first 2, my 3rd and 4th suspensions were both retroactively overturned, and I graduated with a clean record. I attended... Okay, so now we're done with the high school. We're done with high school. We're moving on. So that's the high school newspaper. I think he does the Yeti in college, right? Is his next newsletter, and then he's also going to have the VTech story here, I guess. We might be listening to his police deposition soon. I attended Colorado State University in the spring. Think about police. In the spring of 2004 for one semester. I include this section only for completeness, as I wasn't actioned by the school, but they did demand that I undergo a psychological evaluation if I ever sought readmittance. During this time, I repeatedly begged for the opinion editor of the school newspaper, the Rocky Mountain Collegian, to give me a column. Amused by my willingness to repeatedly enter the newspaper office and bother him at his desk, he relented and made me a guest columnist. CSU's athletic department had recently come under fire for hiring strippers for football recruitment parties, after which the strippers said they'd been sexually assaulted. I wrote 2 columns about the situation before I was fired. The first was a milquetoast but sincere lament about sex work and the objectification of women. The second was a satirical essay, in which I proposed the CSU start a women's bikini football league so I could ogle the players. I submitted the piece with the neutral title, Sexism in Sports, but the humour-challenged editorial staff ran it with the confusing headline, Sexism Corrupts Sports. Women score while men stare at them. 4 students replied in letters to the editor. 2 commended my satire, and 2 called me a sexist pervert and urged the paper to fire me. They did, along with the opinion editor who'd hired me. I then started a self-published newspaper that I handed out in my dorm called The Snowball. I wrote 6 issues, gained some fans and some haters. Someone threw a chicken nugget at me once. I left the school at the end of semester. There we go. Jesus. The University of Colorado. The Yeti. After brief stints in Los Angeles and Boston, I settled on the University of Colorado at Boulder as my school of choice. I was 21 when I started in fall of 2006. The Colorado Daily was an independent newspaper not affiliated with the school, which had its office in the University Memorial Center. If CU were a high school, this would be the cafeteria. They did not employ students and were not charmed by my repeated requests for a column. There was a student newspaper, the Campus Press, but it was not widely read as the Colorado Daily overshadowed it. I decided to self-publish a newsletter called the Yeti. Issue 1 was about why girls don't like me, brackets because I'm too smart, and issue 2 was about why I'm afraid of black people. They got mixed, but muted responses from the community. Issue 3 caused a minor uproar. It was an essay about the myth of the female orgasm. Okay, I've read this on stream before, but we're going to do it again. Alright. Good afternoon, boys and girls. Today, we're going to talk about sex. More specifically, we'll be discussing the myth of the female orgasm. It has recently come to my attention that many young people believe that women can have an orgasm. This is simply not true. I know that probably comes as a shock to you liberals, with your MTV and your masturbation and your free speech, but I have proof that women are physically incapable of having orgasms. What proof, you may wonder? Scientific experiments? Anonymous surveys? No. Personal experience. I was 16 years old the first time I had sex. I've been watching hours upon hours of pornography ever since I was 8, so I pretty much know what I'm doing. Nevertheless, once I start pounding away, my girlfriend winced and complained it didn't feel good. I didn't take this obvious attack on my manhood very lightly. It made me feel underappreciated, and even insecure. I couldn't figure it out. I'd done exactly what the guys in pornos do. Why didn't it blow her mind? I thought it was all my fault. Fuck me. Then I did a little research. I found out that a lot of porn actresses actually fake their orgasms. So when I thought to myself, if a trained professional with a 9-inch penis can't make a woman have a real orgasm, who can? The answer is no one. If porn actresses have to fake, all women must fake. Therefore, women can't have orgasms. I patiently explained to her that the romantic images of sex, as portrayed in the movies and in books, with all the women moaning their heads off, is completely inaccurate. Women aren't supposed to like sex. Once she understood this, we got along much better. She learned to be quiet and lie still while I made love to her. Eventually, I began feeling a little guilty that I was having all the fun. I told her to perform oral sex on me every day, instead of us having intercourse, because it was a lot easier for me to enjoy myself when I didn't have to see her face. Our relationship continued happily for a few months, but then something happened. Something weird happened. One night, I was awakened by what seemed to be an earthquake. I was terrified at first, but after a few seconds, I saw that my girlfriend was doing the shaking. Not Earth. Then I noticed that she had her hand firmly planted on her thingy. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. She froze, wide-eyed, and meekly responded that she was trying to have an orgasm. My anger quickly softened to pity. My initial fear that she was trying to have sex without me, or that maybe she was a witch, disappeared. I suddenly realised that she'd probably seen a woman touching herself in a porn movie, and had thought that this perverted, godless behaviour would turn me on. But I wasn't turned on. I was disgusted. I told her that I appreciated the gesture, but I didn't want to see her lowering herself to acting out this sick male fantasy ever again. She agreed to stop, but there were several repeat offences, and, in order to preserve her dignity and self-respect, I ultimately had to resort to physical restraints that would limit her hand movements. This too proved ineffective, as I later awoke to find her contorted and upside down, feverishly struggling to reach her vagina, so I bought some ankle cuffs too. We've been happy ever since. Now I realise I'm not Superman, I wear glasses, I blink a lot, and I generally have a dorky, hairy, awkward appearance. These things do matter in bed. Do not matter in bed, sorry. It's all about technique. So in the following paragraphs, I present to you my official men's guide to sex. First of all, do not compliment your partner about her body. This will make her think you're a sissy, and then she won't want you anymore. If you want to keep her, instead try to look at her breasts like you're evaluating them. Pretend you're a doctor. Also, during the sex act, you should avoid communicating with your partner. Don't ask her any questions about how she's feeling or what she would like you to do. You should try to keep her mind off of her sensations and emotions, because thinking about them will only upset her more than is necessary. Now on to the physiology of sex. There are several areas of the female body that you can just disregard off the bat, as they are basically useless to men. These include the earlobes, the neck, the inner thighs, and the clitoris. The clitoris especially can be ignored because it has no function at all, like an appendix. As far as I can tell, it just sits there. Lips are a mixed blessing. They can bring you great pleasure, but they also allow women to express their thoughts and feelings, and this can be unpleasant to hear. If you feel like being a sucker, You can play out her stupid romantic fantasies by kissing her on the lips. You might as well try to time it with the spaghetti kiss in The Lady and the Tramp. And then you can go try out for the buffs. Breasts can be cool to look at and grab. They don't really have any nerves in them, so you can squeeze them as hard as you want, so as long as you don't pop them. They're basically just milk balloons. Unless you're a baby, there is no reason to kiss or suck on them, other than to reminisce. This brings us to the final and most important part of the female body, the vagina, or alternatively, the receptacle. Women generally prefer that you jam your penis in their vaginas as quick as possible during sex, ideally before it's wet at all, so they can actually feel it. They will express their appreciation for this by saying, ow. Once you wriggle your way in, just pound away as fast and as hard as you can. You can tell women really like this because they get this distant, pained expression on their faces, as if they are desperately trying to escape to a dream world that they constructed when they were 11 years old and their breasts started to grow, and they realize they're going to be treated like blow-up dolls for the rest of their lives. That's when you're really hitting the spot. If you do exactly as I've told you, every girl that see you, excepting the occasional dork or lesbian, will sleep with you. If they complain of discomfort or boredom, just remind them that sex is designed for men, not women. I mean, think about it scientifically. If men don't orgasm during sex, it's the end of the human race. If women don't orgasm, who really cares? Saying that sex should feel good to women is like saying that it should feel good to a trash can when you throw garbage into it. 3 important things to think about. 1. Remember, you are the jackhammer and she is the sidewalk. You are the asteroid and she is the dinosaurs. You are the oil drill and she is a rock. 2. Do not read the 3 important things to think about before you read the actual body of the newsletter. They are dessert. You must eat your vegetables before you can have the dessert. 3. I'm going to stop writing these as soon as I get laid. I was summoned to the office of the Vice-Chancellor, Ronald Stump, to discuss my essay. He framed the meeting as a warning and asked me to stop distributing my newsletter, as it was upsetting people. Being well versed in the First Amendment rights of school students, I flatly refused. Colorado Daily, Sexism or Satire. A student-made newsletter riles many who see it as dehumanizing. Violent and misogynistic. The Colorado Daily ran a story titled Sexism or Satire, detailing the community's response to my piece, including the meeting with Stump. In response to my coverage, the ACLU wrote the school a letter warning Stump about his actions having potential chilling effects on student speech. Oh yeah, I probably should have removed that chat message, whoops. Smart move. Oh well. The administration didn't directly interfere with my newsletter again, but I'd made enemies of both Stump and the Women's Studies Department. On April 17th, 2007, the day after the VTech shooting, they saw an opportunity to strike back. The Virginia Tech arrest. Alright, here we go. As part of a discussion called Historical and Contemporary Issues of Black Women, our professor asked us for reactions to the shooting. I was already working on a Yeti about the topic, and after hearing repeated claims of bewilderment and heartbreak from my classmates, I raised my hand and said, anyone who says they've never thought about shooting 32 people is lying. I went on to explain that in a culture that celebrates violence and ignores the emotional problems of young people, it was irresponsible for us to play stupid. We've all been to public school, and it's not a mystery why kids shoot each other. Whether sincerely or not, my professor responded as though I may be making a threat to kill everyone, and asked for clarification. I clarified that I was not making a threat. That afternoon, Ron Stump summoned me back to his office for a meeting where he suspended me for threatening my classmates. I asked him if he felt threatened by me, and he said no. When I left the meeting, there were 2 detectives waiting outside. One of them said, "I'm afraid it doesn't end there, Max," and held out a pair of handcuffs. I was charged with interference of faculty, staff, or students of an educational institution, meaning that I'd made it impossible for the classroom to function normally by threatening to kill people. I spent the night in jail and woke up to watching myself on CNN with the other inmates, who cheered. Awesome. I was barred from campus for the next 2 months, underwent regular drug and alcohol testing despite being straight edge, and a restraining order prevented me from coming within 30 feet of any of my ex-classmates. I later found out that police had been called not by my professor, but by the head of the Women's Studies Department, Upon hearing of my arrest, she cheered, "We got his ass." 4 ACLU-affiliated lawyers represented me pro bono, 2 for the criminal charge and 2 for my suspension from the school. Both cases were resolved over the summer, after I refused to plead guilty and after the media furor died down. The district attorney offered me a deferred prosecution, meaning they'd drop the charges after 1 year if I didn't commit any other crimes, which I accepted. The head of judicial affairs at Colorado University was actually sympathetic to my story and retroactively reduced my suspension to 3 days, clearing me to return to class in the fall. Karson agrees to take deal. As young Mrgirl. Record will stay clean if student stays out of trouble. The darkness of bedtime at the Baldy County Jail came quickly for Max Karson. The 22-year-old University of Colorado junior lay on the top bunk of a jail cell one night in April, alone with his thoughts. About the class that day, about what he'd said, what he hadn't said. The criminal case against him, resolved Wednesday without prosecution, began in a small CU classroom April 17th. Cho Sung-hui, had gone on a shooting rampage the day before at Virginia Tech, killing 32 people and then himself. An instructor in one of Karson's classes asked students to respond to the killing. Fuck me. Karson made some statements. He says he was humanizing the gunman and relating to his anger that heated up the debate. They also scared his classmates. That afternoon, Vice Chancellor Ron Stump suspended him. Outside Stump's office, Karson said he was met by detectives who said, "I'm sorry, Max, but it doesn't end there. We're going to have to take you." Okay, and then it carries on. I assume on whatever page. Okay. Here's a video about the Virginia Tech arrest with more detail, if you're interested. I am.
This is an interview with Max Karson.
So this is his police interview. I believe this has other police interviews as well. I think I've seen this before. It has his police interview and classmate police interviews, I think. So we're gonna give this a shot. Yeah, listen to some of this.
It's April 17th at 16:06 hours. Also present is Detective Jason Wade, and I am Detective Brian Jordan.
So just to start off with, why do you think you're here?
I think I'm here because some of my classmates and my professor became uncomfortable during a conversation we had in class today.
I usually tell this story like it's a joke, and people usually laugh, but it's not actually that funny. In 2007, in my junior year of college, at the age of 22, I was arrested for comments I made in a class discussion about the Virginia Tech shooting. The name of the class was Contemporary and Historical Issues of Black Women. The shooting, which was and still is the deadliest shooting, school shooting in U.S. history.
Yeah, I know this is an hour. We're gonna at least watch some of it. I don't know how if we'll watch all of it. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. See how much I've got to say about it.
The day before, our teacher asked us to share our thoughts on the shooting because it was basically impossible to talk about anything else that day.
And people started sharing their thoughts on it, starting with her. She said that one of the reasons these shootings happen is that there isn't enough love in the world between people and that we should foster more love. She started the discussion by saying that she thought that a lot of black people in the U.S. would be mad that President Bush made it to the Virginia Tech site but never went to New Orleans.
For my comments, I was arrested, suspended, barred from campus. But let me give you some background first. My brother started reading me Stephen King stories when I was about 8. The content of the stories definitely had an effect on me and made me realize there are other people in the world that are as fucked up as I am, which was nice. And also sort of like swayed me toward being really interested in horror. I think more importantly, it got me interested in writing itself. I started writing disturbing sort of copycat, but kind of unique, fucked up stories when I was in 3rd grade. My teachers would like call my parents and, just check on things. By 5th and 6th grade, I would print out my stories. I'd write one like every month or two, like not super often. And I would print them out and hand them to people in the lunchroom, and they would read them and pass them around. And it was like my favorite thing on earth to eat my hot dogs or my chocolate milk or whatever and watch women react to my stories. I know I said women, they're 12. That's because I'm conditioned. I was raised in a very liberal town.
Mr. Girl is like my stupid buddy who always seems to have bad luck. At some point, you would think these people ask themselves if they are responsible for situations he's being into. Obviously, Mr. Girl knows he's being provocative. What a retarded comment. That doesn't mean that the actions that are taken against him are justified. That doesn't mean that people aren't being retarded when they go out of their way to misinterpret what he's saying.
So I speak liberal. I'm like super fluent in liberal. I know how liberals think. I know how they talk. I know how we're supposed to talk. Yeah, that's important for this story. In high school, I wanted to write more about what was going on at school. I was more interested in nonfiction. I went to the editor-in-chief of the school paper and I said, I would like a column, sir. And he said, no. And then I went back to him at the next trimester and I said, I would like a column. He said, no. I came back again and he said, no. And then he said, why don't you start your own paper? And I said, in like kind of a fuck you way. And I said, okay.
Like when people say like, oh, this guy's his own worst enemy. Oh, this guy's causing problems for himself. Like, you don't want people like this? You don't want anyone doing anything genuinely edgy, anything that genuinely upsets people, while also having like some kind of point? You just don't want this? Like, oh, why can't you just be normal? Why can't you just be a total bot? Like, why can't you just forget everything you think and fit in? How about no?
I started writing a newsletter called The Crux. It was a one piece of paper printed on both sides, 1,000-word essay, or two 500-word essays about whatever I felt like talking about. And I would write it pretty much every 2 to 4 weeks. The first year passed without event. The second year, I was suspended for writing an article about the principal who had turned out to be a child molester. So our principal, Stephen Myers, had asked a student to
people who attack him know exactly what he is talking about. That's why they hate him. I don't believe that for a second.
Show him his...
If you are a mystical, critical person, please feel free to explain to me the well-founded, intelligent problem that you have with him.
Was suspended for writing an article about the principal who had turned out to be a child molester. So our principal, Stephen Myers, had asked a student to show him his nipples because the student was self-conscious that he had man boobs, and then invited him over to his house to hang out in his hot tub, which I think they did a couple times. This raised some concern with the kid's mother, and then the Santa Cruz Police Department called our local paper. I'm from Amherst, Massachusetts, by the way. Called our local paper and told them that he was a known pedophile, but that all of the parents of the young boys that he had masturbated with back in Santa Cruz had declined to press charges. So he went free, left his school there, became a principal at our school, and, got back to business. So I wrote a newsletter saying, listen, my response to Mr. Myers being a pedophile is that I'm going to break up with him. And if I'd known he was a pedophile in the first place, I never would have started dating him. Simultaneously, I wrote an essay about the representation of heroes of different races in our school. Basically saying we only learn about...
Oh, yeah, no, okay, I see what you're saying. No one believes he's literally sexist, but okay, so you're saying that the sexism thing is just the excuse that they use. Really, they get the point and they hate the point. Yeah. Okay, I'm with you.
Martin Luther King Jr. We don't learn about anyone else. And I said the closest thing that the Latin American kids have to MLK is the Taco Bell Chihuahua. Not meaning that is their closest actual leader or person they look up to, meaning that's all the school is giving us in our curriculum. It was an intentionally difficult to understand thing because I was very angry at the hypocrisy of liberals, especially my liberal school, basically doing nothing to actually combat racism. And there were kids getting in racially motivated fights, basically black kids and Latino kids beating the shit out of each other after school.
Okay, I think this is essentially a recap of what we've already heard.
And I was bothered by this kind of community hypocrisy that we're so pro-gay, but they're an American flag coming.
Let's get to the
coming to his office and was like, you can't write this. And I was like, yes, hypocrisy. And
talk about.
I don't. If I see someone who is claiming that they're not racist, but they actually are, I will write something that effectively like smashes me into them and just makes us both look horrible.
Well, don't you feel sometimes that people will take that satirical manner in a negative light instead of doing something positive for the cause?
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern of mine. I don't know. I don't think that reading my newsletter is going to convert someone who wasn't a rapist to being a rapist, or is going to make someone who has no prejudice whatsoever to suddenly being like, wow, I do hate women, you know?
Mm-hmm. What's the worst criticism you've gotten so far?
My least favorite thing is being called racist. That just like gets under my skin and like drives me completely out of my mind. Like in the opinion, the op-ed written by the tri-executives yesterday, they said that I was working to degrade women and minorities, and that like really, really pisses me off.
Yeah. What I'd have to like talk about, I'm wondering if it's all completely satire though. Because when I'm reading these newsletters and they talk about you have, and I quote, girls don't like me because I make them think, I sometimes feel like you almost feel that deep down. Or is this all?
Or not so deep down. No, that's not really.
Do you mean that? Like?
Yeah, I think a lot of girls, yeah, I mean, they're not all satire. I think a lot of girls allow themselves to be objectified and sort of feel more comfortable being objectified because they're used to it. And I think that when they meet someone who really wants to ask them questions and, you know, hear what they're thinking, that just makes them uncomfortable. And then like, or like the one where I say girls who don't masturbate are stupid. I really do think that.
And then finally, what are you going to write about in the future? Any future newsletters? I know you got a CD out.
Yeah. The next one is about being a white ally and my thoughts on that.
Okay.
And the one after that's about gay people.
So in the middle of all this, I took a class called Contemporary and Historical Issues of Black Women. Hearing about the shooting, I read it, all the news stories and everything about it the first day. The next day, I went into class. The teacher said, okay, we're going to have, I think the teacher's name was Michelle, but she called herself Mitty, as in Diddy. Mitty says, we're going to talk about the Virginia Tech shooting.
If someone, based upon a person's actions, feels intimidated, threatened, coerced, that causes pretty much a negative effect on their studies, then that's the crime right there. So what these students are claiming, for all intents and purposes, is that your actions, by you making those statements, I'm not going to kill you all, or I've been angry in the past.
Yeah.
I've been angry, or I've thought about killing someone.
Right.
I'm not going to kill you on Thursday.
Right.
Led them to the conclusion that you're the next Virginia Tech gun-toting whatever he was. That's their belief.
Right.
And that's where this is all headed towards. That's the problem that we're faced with. Is you're saying, well, it was kind of a joke. I'm just trying to make a point because I don't want any more people to die. I don't want people to be killed because of these reasons, institutionalization, parents being people the way they are. But in the same aspect, you've got one of the worst school shootings in history in the United States right now, and then you're talking about that you are or have thought about killing someone.
Yeah.
You're angry now because you're in this classroom with these people, and the way this classroom is, and that you got pretty much mindless droves, idiots, stupid people,
it was
conformists, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, I'm not going to kill you on Thursday, though.
Right. Yes, it was tactless, and I wish I hadn't said it. But the other side of this is nobody was scared until Michelle. Okay, first of all, before we start talking about it,
so yeah, what did he say? Because there's a little bit extra to the statement there, I think.
Stupid people, it was conformists, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, I'm not going to kill you on Thursday, though.
Right. Yes, it was tactless.
Did he say, I'm not going to kill you on Thursday, though?
Killing someone.
Is that it?
You're angry now because you're in this classroom with these people, and the way this classroom is, and that you got pretty much mindless droves, idiots, stupid people, it was conformists, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, I'm not going to kill you on Thursday, though.
Right. Yes, it was tactless, and I wish I hadn't said it. But the other side of this is nobody was scared until Michelle. Okay, first of all, before we start talking about it, Michelle set the tone by saying, look, if a lot of you feel uncomfortable, if you feel that the school shooting might happen here, you should be uncomfortable and you should be scared, because this is the kind of campus that these shootings are likely to happen on. And if you're walking along and you're thinking, God, there's 50 vantage points someone could jump out and shoot me from, you're right, there are 50 vantage points, and you should be worried. So if anybody is creating fear in the students that is making it hard for them to be in class, I think Michelle is the one doing that. And nobody got scared during our conversation until she said, have you thought about killing people? And then she said, okay, well, now you've got a room full of people who think that you're going to come in and shoot them on Thursday. So since she was the one who said, everyone, you should be scared, and then she said, everyone, you should think Max is going to shoot you on Thursday, I don't think that the responsibility falls on me.
Fair enough.
If anybody's setting the tone of fear there, all I said was, I've thought about it, I would never do it, and here's how I think we should stop it.
Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Jordan, I think we're good. Do you have anything else you want to say? We're going to shut off the recording now.
No.
Okay.
Literally, he stopped the police in the
This
debate.
concludes the interview with Max Karson.
Different kids start talking. They're all saying the same thing. They're all saying, I can't believe this happened. I can't imagine this would happen. Oh my God, this is so tragic and so sad. Oh gosh, it's so scary. I can't believe it. And all the same shit that everybody, thoughts and prayers, the same shit everybody says every time. And I realized they're trying to distance themselves and say, I would never do this. I can't relate to it. This isn't me. I would never kill anyone. It's like the movie The Thing. It's like everybody's trying to convince everybody else that they're not crazy and that they're not the next shooter. It's and I don't think it's conscious. It's like an instinctive response that I think is very, very damaging. How are you going to figure out why people are shooting each other if you're not going to empathize with them? And it's the same thing with terrorism. It's the same thing with rape or any other horrible thing that you're trying to solve. The first thing you need to do is figure out and try to understand for yourself what would make me fly a plane into a building. How could I be pushed to do that? Why would I want to do that? And if you've been to public school or maybe any school, asking yourself what would make me want to shoot my classmates is not that hard of a question to answer. So in my frustration at hearing these incredibly self-serving responses to the tragedy from my classmates, I started working on writing by hand my newsletter that I wanted to write about it. And I do the same thing with my channel, but basically I would try to figure out what was not being said and what I thought needed to be said and try to add that. What I wrote down was in response to this girl, I don't remember who it was, but I remember that the person that made me raise my hand in class said, shooting 32 people. I can't imagine wanting to shoot 32 people. And I wrote down my first line, and then I raised my hand and said it out loud. Anyone who says they've never thought about shooting 32 people is lying.
Anybody who says they haven't thought about killing people before is lying. Because people were saying, I can't imagine or even fathom doing that. And I just think that we all played cowboys and Indians when we were little. A lot of us played video games. We watch movies. Everybody has violent fantasies at one time or another. It's just some people act on them and some people don't. And I said that school is de-individualizing. They put a lot of pressure on people to be a certain way and do certain things, and some people just snap and they can't handle it.
How did Max Karson engage himself in this discussion?
By announcing that he could empathize with the Virginia Tech shooter and theorizing that that person was angry at the institution of Virginia Tech or institutional education in general, and that he probably had really bad parents.
The teacher said, "Are you saying you've thought about shooting people?" And I said, "Thought about it or considered it?" And she said, "Both." And I said, "I've never considered it, but I've thought about it. I think all of us have thought about it. We live in a society that is filled with violence, like all video games, movies, sports, like everything we do. Like humans are violent animals, and we live in a country that's obsessed with guns. Of course, we've all thought about shooting people." And I went on to say, there is nothing we can do about the shooter now. He's dead. And unless we have a time machine and we can go back in time and fix his childhood so he did not grow up to be a psychopath, there's nothing we can do about that.
If you want to fix the shooter or fix the individuals, you have to go back in time and take them away from their parents when they're a week old and give them new parents. The institution, the school, the way we treat our children is something that we can fix now. And there's something about it that is making them kill each other. And I said there's a lot of different factors, but I think that's the only one that we really have control over. And someone else said, "Why do you keep blaming the parents?" And then the guy behind me said, I could say something about your parents from the things you've said in this classroom. I think that they messed something up. And I said, yeah, they probably did, obviously. Yes, because I'm known in the classroom and otherwhere on campus for saying inflammatory things. And then he said, I think that your parents didn't give you enough hugs when you were little. And I was like, no, probably not. You're right. And the teacher said, so would that be a fair judgment of you? And I was like, yes.
I think the teacher started baiting me. She said, she said, are there things that make you angry on campus? And I said, yes, like the mindless droves of stupid people walking around on campus, the shitty fluorescent lights, the crappy buildings that are falling apart while we're paying thousands of dollars in tuition. There's lots of things that make people unhappy at school. And I think if we can address them, not saying like fixing the fucking lights is going to stop school shootings, but I can see how somebody who was raised like me, who doesn't know how to handle their emotions, and who doesn't have the interpersonal and or creative or artistic or whatever outlets that I've been able to have, could snap. And that is a fucking problem. And as I said before, I think we need to empathize with these people. So anyway, that's basically, they got an argument that
I think people fucking hate it because they just want to be able to say school shooter bad, lock them up, oh, these people are crazy, and all this shit. But if you actually, like, obviously, it's more common to think about doing that than people want to admit.
Pretty much the entire class of me just saying, like, you guys are all in denial about this. Like,
yeah, people don't want to accept their part in it. They don't want to accept that there's something they could have done. They don't want to accept that the way they act contributes. That
you're not crazy and that you wouldn't do this does not help anything. If you want to help, you have to empathize. Hey guys, doing a little editing here. Yes, I shaved and got a haircut. I forgot to tell you about a very important moment in the class discussion. The professor, Mitty, said, Max, do you realize that you just made all of your classmates afraid that you're going to come to school and kill them all on Thursday? And I said, I'm not going to kill everyone on Thursday. And then someone laughed and said, oh, great, thanks, Max. And then someone else said, or ever? And I said, or ever.
There was a pause, and one of the students said, or ever? Or one of his classmates said, or ever? And he sort of capitulated and said, or ever. One of the students to my left said, or any other day, Max? And he said, so I didn't catch the beginning, but it sounded like he said, yeah, or any other day.
And what did that mean to you personally?
It was a complete afterthought. I mean, it seemed like the statement of the day was that, well, I'm not going to kill you on Thursday.
Now, before you criticize my response to that question, I want you to imagine someone asking you that question. Someone literally asking you if you are going to come to your class and shoot everyone. And before they said that, you didn't think it was a possibility that they thought you were capable of doing this. I thought back on that moment as...
I don't usually share stories on stream, but when I was in fucking secondary school, I texted someone as a joke, oh, don't come into school. I think it was when that 4chan post where the guy's like, some of you guys are all right. And then there was that shooting. I think it was around then. And I basically did that as a joke to this guy who I was like sort of friends with. He was like sort of in like the more like popular groups and shit, but I was like cool with him. But I would joke about being a school shooter a lot. And then he started texting people being like, dude, I think something's going to happen. I had to message him and be like, dude, I was just kidding. I was just fucking around.
The moment when everybody started getting really scared, and it's always felt very unfair that I've taken the blame for scaring everyone. I said that we should empathize with everyone. We should empathize with school shooters in order to understand them. And it was the professor who kept driving the conversation toward me shooting people. And you'll hear
he was
the
retarded.
effects of that in the police interviews with my classmates.
I just got an email from my teacher saying that he was suspended.
And he's been arrested.
Oh, he has?
Actually, yeah, and we're
he was not smart.
I'm kind of just find out the impact of his statements.
Uh-huh.
So there's a chance that your name would be listed as, a victim or a witness to what had happened. But it would only go so far as if it were to actually go to trial and he were to be able to find out that...
I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. If he knows that I said something and he finds me or something, I don't want to be the victim of it, and I don't want him to take it out on me.
And he was like, well, it's not like I'm going to bring a gun to school on Thursday. Like, I could find a reason to kill 30 people at this university.
At this university?
I'm not positive. I think that's what he said, but I can't be positive.
Okay.
He definitely was alluding to, I could see how somebody... No, he did. Actually, he did. He did say that.
I didn't feel threatened. I felt that he was interpreting the situation and doing what the class asked of him, and asked of everyone, was to try to understand and comprehend how things like this come about. I thought that was the idea of the discussion. I wouldn't blame your parents
for anything, that I had a problem with you. And he's like, I don't know if you had a messed up childhood. And Max said, well, I did. I've had personal interactions with Max in the past, and he's just he seemed aggravated in the past and angry to me, no reason.
I didn't feel threatened by it, but I was concerned that there was something going on with him that wasn't quite right, and I kind of always got that vibe from him anyways. So, yeah.
Everything he says is controversial. Everything all of his opinions are like pretty much the polar opposite of what like most people think. And, like, keep in mind this is like a black women's studies class, so he's like, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but he's like pretty much he's racist.
You can't tell me that there's one person in this class that hasn't thought about killing 32 people on this campus, and how I think about it all the time. And then the whole class is just kind of like, oh, it's crazy. And then we're like, no, actually, we've never thought about that. And he's like, well, I have. Like, at first, I just couldn't believe that someone would say that. But he's the type of kid that like says like things crazy all the time. But I thought that like took it to a completely different level by saying that he thinks and has thought about killing people.
Right.
Like, that's ridiculous. Like, okay.
Max always is kind of against the class. He likes to say his point and get it out there nice and strong. So I took it as one of the other things he was saying in the class. I didn't feel threatened at the time. He also said, I'm not going to come to class on Thursday and shoot you.
Our professor said, you're not going to do that ever, are you? And he said, well, I mean, no. He'll just make comments that are pretty, I would say, right-wing, but, that's just my own personal opinion. I believe after someone asked him, well, are you going to do that? You're not going to do that to us on Thursday. Then someone else says, do you own a gun? And he said, well, yeah, but I'm not saying that that's something I would do. Understanding that this Yeti, I read some of those things last semester and last year, that this guy obviously likes an audience. That audience is now taken away from him. And for me, that is cause for concern. He is alienated out now. And I'm not sure what that would make him do. But based on the experiences I've had from him in the class, it would not surprise me at all to see him do exactly what he said he's thought about doing.
Oh my God.
Walked out of class and went to go meet my friend at a coffee shop. And on the way there, I realized I'm going to get suspended. The Women's Studies Department's got it in for me. I've given them the ammunition they need to suspend me. Pretty sure. I told my friends,
that guy sounded
and they were like, no. And then we were walking to class. We walked back because I had another
He
class.
hates white people. He's very racist.
And there was a cop car parked outside the Women's Studies Department. And I thought, is that for me?
Also, guys, now is a great time to remind you to please like, subscribe, donate, buy a membership, gift a membership, buy a super chat if you can. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I don't see how it can be, but I think it is. And then I told my friend, I think I might get arrested. And she was like, no. So I'm walking to class. I get a phone call. It's the vice chancellor. He said, Max, I need you to come to my office right now.
He's scheduled to go see Ron Stump.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Sees him fairly regularly, it seems to me.
I go to his office. We sit down, and he says, Max, I'm suspending you for comments you made in your last class. For threats you made. And I said, what are you talking about? I had no idea what you're talking about. I mean, we had a conversation about school shootings, but I didn't threaten anybody. And they said that you said that you're angry enough to kill, and that you have every reason to kill anyone in this room or anyone else on campus.
Dude.
I said, okay, I didn't say anything like that. And you've known me for like a year, and I've never said anything like that. I don't own a gun. I've never owned a gun. I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, well, people felt threatened by you. And so we have to suspend you to make sure campus is safe. And I said, do you feel threatened by me? And he said, no. I said, okay, then why are you suspending me? And he said, well, other people felt threatened by you. And I said, so you don't think I'm a threat, but other people do think I'm a threat. So you're going to suspend me? And it turned out that the person who called the police wasn't even in the class. It was the head of the Women's Studies Department. She called the police, and later when I was arrested, when she found out, she drove around in the parking lot of the Women's Studies Department, leaning out of her window, screaming, "We got his ass." I went back and forth like that with the vice chancellor for a while. And then I eventually said, okay, you're suspended from campus until further notice. And I said, I'm going to miss all my finals. And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay. So I walked out of his office, and there are two plainclothes detectives waiting for me in the hallway. And they said, sorry, Max, it doesn't end there. We have to place you under arrest. They put handcuffs on me, put me in the back of a cruiser, and started chatting with me about video games. And
Oh yeah, no ulterior motives there. Height of school shooting panic. Detective starts asking about fucking video games. Yeah, I can't imagine what was going on there.
Small talk, trying to trick me.
Ever play? Yeah, ever play Postal?
And I'm naturally like
ever play Grand Theft
person, so
Auto?
I was friendly with them, but I'm also not a fucking moron. They took me to the police station and booked me, and left
That's
me
an awesome mugshot. It goes
in
hard.
an interrogation room alone with a hidden camera. I took my phone out and I texted my father and friends telling them that I'd gotten arrested. They came back and confiscated my phone, hoping I would incriminate myself in the interim. The texts were later removed from evidence because you're not actually allowed to do that if you don't have like cause to actually search someone's phone. I told them the same story that I just told you. I knew that I could just not say anything. I was hoping I could convince them to let me go.
So I don't know what you mean. He's so dedicated. It's not a bit. It's not a bit. There's no bit. He's saying what he thinks.
Telling them a very concise, airtight story of what happened, and obviously
There's
hadn't
no
broken any
bit.
laws or threatened to
There's
kill
no
anyone.
joke.
I thought they'd want to save themselves the embarrassment of having to drop the charges later. Didn't work. They took me to a jail and put me in the drunk tank with a very small cell with some cots on the floor and a bench, and left me in there with detoxing drug addicts, drunk people, people with puke on them, crazy people rolling around on the floor for 4 or 5 hours. It was like 5 p.m. when we got there and like 9 p.m. when one of the detectives came. Cheerful as ever, asked me to come out and said, Max, we'd like to search your apartment. So what we'd do is we'd go there together and we'd just take a look. How would you feel about that? And I said, you want to search my apartment? And he said, well, we could go over there together and take a look now, or I can come back and ask you again tomorrow. And what he didn't realize is that I don't back down from anything. And I said, well, you better come back and ask me again tomorrow. So he said, okay. They took me to the jail, like the actual like jail part of the jail. I had to strip naked, had to put on a like jail regulation boxers and socks and shoes, put on a red jumpsuit, and they took me into the jail. It was like this pretty big room with tables and TVs, and then 2 stories of cells along the wall. Like pretty much what you'd see in a movie. I walked in trying to look like I'd been there before. And as the guard was bringing me up to my cell, every single person in the room, probably like 35 guys, all stopped what they were doing and watched me walk in. And I slipped on the fucking steps walking up. And one of them screamed fish, like as in I had never, like as in it was my first time. And they all started screaming and laughing and pointing at me. Then as soon as they showed me to my cell, this guy came up to me and he was like, which mattress do you want? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, I want 2 mattresses. You only need 1. And then I realized he's going to take the other mattress out. And then if I get paired with a cellmate, they're going to be like, why the fuck did you give one of the mattresses away? And then I'm going to have to give mine to him. And then I thought of what I should say. It was like in Terminator when the possible responses come up. And I was going to say, go fuck yourself. But I realized that I'm only in there for a day. So I probably shouldn't do that. So I just stared at him and didn't say anything. And then a guard was like, hey, get the fuck out of his cell. Like, leave him alone. I just sat in the cell for another hour or so till they turned the lights out. And I was by myself until I think like midnight. a guard came, unlocked the cell, and let another guy in.
Yeah,
He's
God,
probably
for real.
28, 30. He told me that his cellmate had started like coughing up mucus. He said he had a bunch of gray shit hanging out of his face, and that he had called a guard and said the guy needed medical attention, so they moved him into my cell. He got on his bunk and he was like, so like, what are you here for? And I was like, I don't fucking know. Like I've been charged with interference with faculty, staff, and students of an educational institution, which is basically like you're making it so the school can't run normally, which is not, I mean, like, what happened? I asked him what he was there for, and he said, he was like, DUIs. I was like, you have 18 months for DUIs, and he was like, yeah, I got like 4, and then I got like 6 months. I got let out early, then I got another, and he was like, dude, like, I got to smoke weed, because like when I smoke weed, like I want to just like chill and just like watch TV, but like when I fucking drink, like I want to like go out and do shit. Like I gotta stop drinking. It really changed my opinion of the criminal justice system. Like I don't see what locking this fucking guy up for 18 months is gonna do. Like I guess it keeps him off the road from being drunk, but like I would be very surprised if he has not gotten 10 more DUIs in the decade since this happened. He got up on his bunk and I was like, hey, do you know what time it is? And he said, why? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess you haven't, like, why? Because I'm going to get the fuck out of here, and like I probably am going to get to leave sometime shortly after 9 a.m. But like you're here for another 50 days or something, so I guess it doesn't matter to you. Woke up, had jail breakfasts. This old guy was like, he was like, you're not gonna eat your bread. We call that the brick. You got to put your like sausage gravy on it. It was like come with like little hamburger chunks in it. And I was like, you know what, you can have mine. He was like, for real? Like, are you sure? And I was like, I'm 100% sure that you can have this. And then CNN came on, and I was on it, and I was on like every news station. And then everybody loved me. All of the inmates went from making fun of me to I was like their hero. I think because it was like obvious that I hadn't actually done anything wrong, and I think that gave them the feeling of like justification. Eventually a guard came to get me, to take me to my bond hearing. A lawyer who had read about it in the paper from the ACLU, again, 2 lawyers came to represent me. They got me out on my own recognizance, basically meaning don't fuck up and you don't have to go back to jail. I had to start doing drug tests. I had to go and pee in a cup in front of a guard so he could see the pee coming out of my dick hole. I was told that if I come within 30 feet of anyone from my class, it could be a whole nother charge of violating violating a restraining order. So anytime I saw someone from my class, I had to basically hide from them. They had an officer posted at the classroom, at the contemporary and historical issues of Black women classroom, in case I decided to come and kill everyone. I was barred from campus for 10 weeks. I was invited on all talk shows, everybody, interviews everywhere, every newspaper on the planet. I said no to all of them on the advice of my lawyers. Not a single person in like a serious position, like the head of judicial affairs at the school, the prosecutor, the judge, nobody seemed to think that I was a threat of any kind. It was just like they just kept passing the buck and they're like, well, like this is just like happening to you. Someone decided to railroad you, and I'm not going to be the one to stop it. Really all just starting with the head of the women's studies department, setting the system on its tracks like a fucking train to run.
It's not just that it's believable, it's that he's got enough like evidence around the events that substantiate enough of it to make the rest of it fit into place.
Me over, and like nobody wanted to hit the brakes until 10 weeks after I was arrested. The prosecutors wanted me to plead guilty, and I was like, I will go to fucking jail. Like, fuck you. No. And my lawyers told the prosecutors that I would go to trial before I would plead guilty to anything. Realizing that they were going to lose, eventually the prosecutors offered me deferred prosecution, which means I sign a paper saying I won't do anything wrong for a year, and they dropped the charges after a year, which is what happened. I made this video. I wanted to tell you this story because I think it's pretty relevant now. So when people say like, you have to use the right pronouns for somebody if they request your pronouns, or it's a crime, or it's an act of violence, or, when people are worried about these things, hate speech or various kinds of offensive speech becoming illegal, and ending up in jail because you offended the wrong person or said the wrong thing. It's happened to me. I'm telling you that it can actually happen. And I can imagine...
I don't get your address from you ordering hoodies. I don't get your address from hoodie orders. Don't worry. Guys, that's a great reminder to go. Please, guys, remember to like, subscribe, donate, buy a membership, gift membership. Buy a super chat if you can. Go to reddit.com/r/Kuihman, twitter.com/Kuihman. Order a hoodie from the channel store page. Also go to Mrgirl.tv. Okay, that's also a good one.
No, we don't want to turn into China, where you go to jail if you say the wrong thing. I also wanted to make this video just because I've never really talked about it in any kind of public way, and I figured it's time I did. 11 years later. I think the worst part of it was that everybody thought I was a snotty little shit trying to provoke people and troll people and taking a national tragedy and trying to make light of it somehow for political reasons or just because I'm an attention whore. I am an attention whore. I will own that, but I was honestly trying to help. I had to get a psychological evaluation to be let back on campus, which I passed. But it was all very, very traumatic and terrifying to see, like, just the dominoes fall of nobody coming to bat for me except the ACLU. I gotta thank them. So whatever you came away from this story thinking of me, I want to leave you with this. I understand why they suspended me. I understand why they arrested me. You can't suspend racism or sexism or bigotry, but you can suspend a person. You can always find a boogeyman to embody the thing that you hate. And the same thing goes for arresting me. It's the illusion of control that you can stop the next shooting if you just arrest the right person. As if arresting me was going to stop me from shooting my classmates. I was actually a lot closer to shooting them after that happened than I was before that happened. But that's water under the bridge. I was saying something scary though, but I think they misunderstood. They thought I was saying that I want to shoot my classmates. I was saying that you do.
Damn, that goes hard. Okay. The Asians article. The faculty advisor for the campus press was a fan of my work, and she asked me to join the school paper as an assistant opinion editor. I was astounded that, after everything, now I was being offered a job at a school paper. I happily accepted. The actual opinion editor was totally disinterested in her job, so I suggested that I read and edit all the submissions and she could do a final review. She foolishly agreed, and just like that, I was somehow in command of the opinion section of the CU student newspaper. Each journalism student was required to submit an opinion piece as part of their curriculum, so I had a constant influx of material to work with. Some of them were weak writers, so I would give them notes and request that they make changes and resubmit their pieces, which everyone found annoying. I didn't get in trouble until a student sent me a moderately racist essay about how annoying it is that Latin Americans don't speak better English. I edited the piece for grammar and submitted it to the editors. The next staff meeting, the editor-in-chief complained that the essay I was racist. The essay was racist, I assume they put an I there. It's a typo, I think. I replied, so what? The students are racist, and we're the voice of the students, so the paper should be racist. We're not here to make the student body look good, we're here to amplify their voices. Based. So based. They found this argument compelling, and we ran it. It's actually still live on the news site. No way. He's so based, man. It's crazy. He just gets through live, he's just like, no, I'm right. And people are like, okay. No hablo inglés. Try speaking English. This is the United States. Do we want to read all of this? I've been biased against the Spanish language ever since I was tortured by my Spanish teacher from kindergarten to 5th grade. My private school felt that we needed to start foreign language at a young age, and it would somehow help us succeed later. Since kindergarteners can't exactly pick between Spanish, Italian, Latin, French, or another language, it was decided for us. Let me tell you, the idea that Spanish would be useful for later was completely wrong. The teacher wore this horrendous smelling perfume, which I can still smell to this day. By the end of class, I would sit there with a pounding headache, hoping the punishment would end. She spoke with this heavy Spanish accent that I couldn't even understand. How the hell am I supposed to learn Spanish if I can't understand the teacher? I spent most of the time looking up curse words in my Webster's English to Spanish dictionary. I was only 12 when I finished what I would later swear would be my purgatory when I die. Of course, this was an exaggeration, it no longer seems like the devil, but I did promise myself on the last day of Spanish class that I would never speak that language again, or any other language except English, for that matter. Little did I understand the concept of immigration and how it would affect me years down the road. I grew up in the metropolitan suburbs of Washington, D.C., surrounded by politics and a multitude of ethnicities. Sure, there are your average brilliant Asians, successful blacks, and of course millions of Hispanics flooding our area. Please don't consider me a racist. I'm nowhere near that. And honestly, my problem is not really with the people themselves. How many times have you walked into McDonald's and not been able to order easily, or at all, because the person taking your order can't understand English? Perhaps I'm the only one absolutely frustrated by the fact we have Mexican grocery stores. And I also think you shouldn't be able to hold a driver's license if you need a translator for the test. That thought makes me scared to get on the road. All the street signs are in English, and I know what you're thinking. We should re-sign them in Spanish, too. No, we shouldn't. Just like we shouldn't allow our government to spend millions of dollars on re-signing all the metro stops in DC in English and Spanish. I'm also irritated by the fact that more money was put into ESL classes than art classes. Why are we accommodating? The United States was once called the melting pot. My great-grandparents immigrated here from all parts of the world, including Ireland, Hungary, and Poland. When they did arrive in the United States, their parents forbid them from speaking their native language. They wanted their children to succeed in the new land of opportunity, and speaking English was part of the transition. What happened to this idea? No, I'm not saying give up your native language. No, I'm not telling you to forget your heritage. I still uphold Polish and Hungarian values and traditions, like racism. I'm saying that if immigrants expect to be accepted into the American culture and way of life, then they must learn English. The United States government has made it far too easy for immigrants not to. People immigrate to America looking for better opportunities and a new life. The language barrier hurts those opportunities and causes racial turmoil, like the protests that took place last year in the Capitol. The language difference also hurts the employer-employee relationship, the student-teacher relationship, and the citizen-immigrant relationship. This makes it harder for immigrants to find a job, to be accepted into the workplace, gain educational achievements, and find true success within the United States. The United States has yet to declare a national language, but if they declare English, Jesus Christ, as the national language, it will take away racial turmoil and allow for more opportunities for citizens and immigrants. It will set the stage for what is required at jobs and schools. Removing citizen and immigrant conflict. Isn't it time the United States took a stand? Jesus Christ. Proven right, yeah. Okay, here we go. Shortly after, I submitted an opinion piece of my own, titled, "If it's war the Asians want, it's war they'll get." This one is not still live on the news site, but here's a copy if you're interested. We're going to read all these? We might as well, fuck it, we're this far. We're this deep. If it's war the Asians want, it's war they'll get. Since I transferred to CU last year, I've noticed some tension between the white students and the Asian students. There's never any outright conflict, but I notice little things, like Asians always seem surprised whenever I talk to them. They stare at me for a few seconds, as though I must have made some mistake. And once they realize I'm intentionally speaking to them, they aren't always thrilled. On the other hand, white people are quick to ridicule Asians. They have no problem with making demeaning remarks about their looks, mannerisms, and accents, things they would never say about black people. So when an Asian refuses to make eye contact with me, or dismisses me with a one-word sentence, I just say to myself, Max, Asians are not evil cyborgs. They're humans, just like you. And if you were a minority student in a sea of walnut-brained business majors and skiers, you'd be crabby too. But last week, I had an epiphany. After my friend and I finished working on our abs at the rec center, we decided to head upstairs to tighten our buns on the Stairmaster. As we walked down the hallway, a rubber ball bounced out of one of the racquetball courts and landed at the feet of an Asian in front of us. He picked up the ball and leaned over the railing of the court nearest to him. Hey, that's not ours, I heard a guy call up from the court. The Asian stared him down for a moment and then held the ball out to him. That's not ours, the guy said again. Then another voice called out from a different court. Hey, does anyone see a ball up there? The Asian looked over, confused. I think it goes to that court, I said, pointing to the one nearest to me. The Asian stared at me blankly for another second. Then he looked back down the court next to him and offered them the ball again. That's not our ball, the guy called up. Excuse me, I said. The Asian whipped his head around and scowled at me. I think it goes to that court. He paused a few seconds, and then he said, in a perfect American accent, okay, and tossed the ball to the court next to me. That's when it all hit me. The Asian was so jaded by his experiences with the white-bread, brainless tree sloths of CU that even though three people had explained to him that he was trying to return the ball to the wrong court, it was inconceivable to him that we might be right. And when he looked into my eyes, it wasn't just irritation and disgust that I saw, it was hate. Pure hate. I'm such a fool for not realizing it sooner. I can't tell you how many times the Asians have treated me like a retarded weasel, and I've forgiven them. But now I know that Asians are not just a product of their environment, and the rudeness is not just a cultural misunderstanding. They hate us all. Hey, dude. And I say it's time we start hating them back. That's right. No more tolerance. No more cultural sensitivity. No more Mr. Pretend I'm not racist. It's time for war. We won't attack their bodies or minds. We will attack their souls. The first step, or phase 1, is to find them all. Anyone who is interested in signing up to volunteer can do so by emailing me. Next Sunday at noon, we will all meet at Farrand Field. Each volunteer will be issued an extra-large butterfly net. The hunt will then begin. When I blow my whistle, we will scatter in every direction and catch as many Asians as possible. Make sure to pay special attention to the rec center, the UMC, the math and engineering buildings, and Lollipop. I think that's what it says. If you're not sure someone is Asian, give them a calculus problem to do in their head. If they get it right, net them. Captured Asians will be dragged to my apartment on the hill and hogtied. Once they're all secured in my living room, phase 2 will come into effect. The Asians' reformation will begin with a 100-round beer pong tournament. They will listen to It's a Small World on repeat while they play. When the tournament is finished, the Asians will be forced to eat bad sushi from Happa with forks. When all the sushi is gone, they will be permitted to sleep for 4 hours, but the entire time I will shout through a megaphone over and over, "Why don't you make enough wheeze?" In the morning, the Asians will arrange themselves in rows, and if they haven't naturally done so already, I will stand in front of them and hold up a card with the name of an emotion, such as sad or surprised. The Asians must then make a facial expression to match the word on the card. Any Asians who remain deadpan or makes the wrong face will be tickled until they pee. When all Asians make the correct face at the same time, the game will end. But then they will be yelled at for being conformists. The Asians will then be allowed to play Dance Dance Revolution. However, the game will be rigged so that the Asians receive no points, regardless of how robotically they dance. Any Asian who tries to escape the butterfly netted will be butterfly netted and sent back to my apartment for another phase 2. Anyone caught speaking any language other than English will be kissed on the lips. What? Okay, dude. Any Asian who tries to... Once the Asian spirit has been broken, phase 3 will begin. Before we let the Asians go, we will go to their homes and redecorate them in a traditional American style. We will replace their rice cookers with George Foreman grills, their green tea mochi with fried Snickers bars, and their rice rockets with Hummers and booster seats. When phase 3 is complete, the Asians will be released. I understand this plan may upset some of you Asian readers, but the only other way to make peace would be to expel you. If you're smart, you'll turn yourselves in now, but it will all be over in a few days. Besides, look on the bright side. We're not going to put you through anything we haven't put ourselves through, and we all turned out fine. This is what they did to South Korea. Here's a copy. Describe my solution to the strained race relations between white and Asian students on campus. I was going to kidnap the Asians with butterfly nets and force them to Americanize. My essay quickly became the most read campus press article of the time by a factor of about 100. The paper received hundreds of angry response submissions. My Facebook DMs were flooded with both fan mail and death threats. I personally got around 1,000 emails over the course of a few days. Everyone got tired. The entire paper was shut down and replaced by the CU Independent, which is structured so it's less directly affiliated with the school. Dr. Phil's staff reached out and invited me on the show to talk about my racist views. I wanted to go on and run circles around him. My lawyer explained that that's not how it works when the host is in control of the audience. He said, it's a freak show and you're the freak. Prophetic. Prophetic. Find that out again later. I wanted the exposure and the opportunity to grow my audience. The problem was, I was realizing I didn't have anything else to say. I was also realizing that the hate was taking a serious toll on me, and that I had other psychological issues I needed to work on in private. I decided to step away from public life for a decade or so. Asian student groups, not understanding the satirical nature of the article, organized a giant protest against Asian hate. They sold shirts that said, "In Solidarity," on them. I attended the protest and surprised them by being friendly and wanting to take a picture together. We were, after all, on the same side. This is fucking epic. And he's leaning down. Oh man, what a guy. Shame Lane. After college, I wrote an anonymous, at first, blog about my sexual development from birth. This was in 2010. I'm not sure Blogger would host the same content today, given my blog's focus on childhood sexual experiences. I'm now in the process of rewriting Shame Lane as a memoir, which hopefully he will finish by the end of the year, so I don't have to pay out a bunch of money. I only have to pay out for the book. I started my YouTube channel, Mrgirl, in the fall of 2017. Here's an archived copy of the channel hosted on Odyssey. Well, we know all about that. My first video was a review of Mortal Kombat. My second video was an essay about the Las Vegas shooting and violence in media. I soon expanded into a variety of topics, using movie clips to illustrate my ideas while keeping myself off screen. After a year of hard work and only 82 subscribers, it became clear that if I wanted any growth, I was going to have to become the face of the channel. I decided I was ready as I'll ever be, and stepped back into public life. I made sure my face was in every thumbnail and appeared on camera regularly. In September of 2020, I posted a review of the movie Cuties, in which I said the film succeeded at making the 11-year-old girls look hot. Here's the review, with some scenes of the girls dancing blurred out so I don't get banned from Substack. Okay, I'm not going to play this full thing because I'm concerned. Within the next few days, dozens of content creators made videos about me, calling me a pedophile. This is when I learned that YouTube is stupid is on a whole different level from college is stupid. Sorry, YouTube stupid is on a whole different level from college stupid. Here is Penguin Zero, also known as Moist Critical, responding to my review. Yeah, I've been over this on stream before. I've got a video about this on my channel if you want to go look for it. The fans of these content creators, presumably mostly high school kids, flocked to my channel to leave negative comments and report my video. I received thousands of anti-Semitic death threats in the comments, as well as emails and DMs. Probably about 25% of the negative comments mentioned me being a Jew. The comments also made excited predictions about when I would take the video down and private my accounts. Of course I didn't, I just kept making videos and ignored the backlash. YouTube's moderation system is a mysterious combination of automated and human decision-making, so I won't pretend to know how or why any of this happened, but my Cuties review was removed and then quickly reinstated twice. Both times, YouTube specified that I had not received a community guideline strike. If you get through within 90 days, you'll be banned. On December 19th, 2020, my entire channel was banned. My appeal was rejected 2 days later. And then nearly 4 months later, I was unbanned. They even apologized for their mistake. The Cuties review was also officially removed one last time, never to be reinstated. And as before, I didn't receive a strike. A few days later, I posted a parody of Eminem's Criminal. Mine was, I'm a pedophile. Okay, if Bug posts this, just remember this is copyrighted, so we might have to cut this, but I can't play it just on stream. I've already played copyrighted music, so. Are we gonna play these? Oh man. Something I'd noticed about the criticisms of the Cuties review was that people thought I was totally unself-aware. This cleared that up, and a large chunk of my detractors became fans. I was also getting compared to Weird Al, which I didn't like, so I followed up with an original rap song called I Can Fantasize About Whatever I Want. Okay, it wasn't a joke though, that's the thing, right? He's making a serious point in this review, which is that the movie it portrayed the girls in an unironically sexual manner like that, and did that well, and that's unethical for it to do, that you shouldn't use children to create like sexual scenes, basically. That was his point. But they also presented an uncomfortable truth about the nature of the sexualization of children. But you have to actually, like, engage with it and think about what he's saying to recognize that, which is way too much to ask from the average YouTuber. This song launched my modest rap career and has garnered around 5 million streams on all platforms combined. On June 22nd, 2021, I was banned again, this time for just 2 weeks. This video, I made a Pornhub parody gif, was the culprit, okay. I started to understand that the moderators don't actually watch your video when they ban you, so I can see how the title and some random screenshots could make you think it was porn. Also, since the Cuties review, my channel has been constantly reported by my detractors for anything that could possibly get me banned. My third ban didn't come until September 2022, following a series of debates with the live streamer Destiny about his friendly relationship with the white supremacist Nick Fuentes. Fuentes called me out for obstructing his access to Destiny's audience, and his own fans took it upon themselves to mass report my channel. See, now what's interesting me is we're not at the end here, and this is pretty recent. Both I'm a pedophile and I can fantasize about whatever I want were removed for child safety, but the entire channel was ultimately banned for a video I posted in 2019 called White is Hard Women, saying like they're still on YouTube now. They're literally on with his fucking music thing. It was an anti-rape essay which used rape scenes from movies to illustrate my points. My ban was for nudity and sexual content. What's strange is I received a strike for the same video back in 2020 and my YouTube had actually accepted my appeal. Rather than remove the video, they age restricted it and sent me this email specifying that it did not violate YouTube's community guidelines. So it was pretty infuriating to only later be banned entirely for the same video. If it broke the rules, why'd they put it back up in the first place when I appealed the strike in 2020? I know asking this is futile, as it is unlikely the same people were involved in both decisions, if any humans were involved at all. I appealed the channel ban several times, including on X, and it was consistently rejected for several months. In August 2023, nearly a year later, I appealed again and was reinstated. I went through my channel's backlog and took down anything that could be possibly construed as violating the nudity and sexual content policy. 3 weeks later, I was banned again, this time for violating the child safety policy. Since no individual videos were removed, I have to assume it was because of the 2 music videos which I posted back in 2021, but I actually have no idea. All of my appeals have been rejected so far, and I'm still banned as of today. TikTok. I can fantasize about whatever I want was on TikTok on summer of 2021. It exploded in popularity and I gained tens of thousands of followers in a matter of days. I was then reported and banned for child safety, which I was banned in March 2022, the day after I interviewed a woman in her early 20s who said she suffers from POCD, that is, obsessive compulsive thoughts about being a pedophile. I told her she probably is a pedophile, but that as long as she doesn't act on it, so what? It's not the end of the world. This and my other content was reported to Twitch as being pro-pedophilia. However, I never received any notification or email from Twitch, so I ultimately don't know why I was banned. Thank you for the membership. Patreon. Patreon banned me in October 2023 with an email stating that they don't allow the sexualization of minors. I don't know what they were referring to, but my empathy for non-offending pedophiles is often misconstrued as me supporting child molestation, similarly to how my empathy for mass shooters was framed as me threatening to kill my classmates. Last year, I wrote an essay titled People Shouldn't Go to Jail for Looking at in which I argued that while should certainly be confiscated and destroyed, it doesn't make a lot of sense, to incarcerate lonely and desperate for merely looking at it. I'm worried about saying too much of that, to be honest. Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if this essay played a part in Patreon's decision to ban me. My appeal was rejected, and my request for clarification was ignored. Apple Music and Genius. Apple Music removed I can fantasize about whatever I want from their service. I don't know when or why. Genius delisted my artist page and all the lyrics to my songs, though some of them have since been re-uploaded. Thoughts on social media bans and free speech. I understand my work is provocative, and you may be thinking, well, what did you expect? I'm not particularly surprised by my bans. It's important that we not let cynicism undermine our right to express ourselves. Free speech in America is dying, and social media is the hole in the bottom of the boat. When conservatives claim they're being censored on social media, progressives like to gleefully point out that the First Amendment only protects our speech from government interference. That's true, but it's a problem, because modern social and political commentary is not shut down. With fire hoses and pepper spray, you just get banned, and you never find out who banned you or why. Even X, the supposed free speech platform, which also banned and unbanned me 3 times, is clear in their terms of service that they will ban you if their provisions of the services to you is no longer commercially viable. And that they may also ban you for any other reason or no reason. Beyond shaping principle and artistic expression via punitive measures, platforms wield the insidious power of the algorithm. There's no front page or shared reality on any social media site, so platforms can selectively suppress or promulgate whatever messages they want with no transparency. When it feels like your political opponents are living in a different reality from you, it's because they are. In this incredibly polarized landscape, neither conservatives nor progressives believe in free speech. Conservatives are happy to ban pro-LGBT messaging, and progressives are happy to ban anything that meets their broad definition of bigotry. And both are happy to ban satirical rap songs about being a pedophile. For me to continue to exist as an artist and social commentator, I have to focus on mediums that don't allow for immediate back and forth with the audience that I've always loved. Spotify doesn't have a report the artist button next to each of my songs, and my memoir sure as fuck won't have one either. I should also note that Substack has been good to me so far. But regardless of what happens to me, social media has become the de facto public square, the lunchroom of the internet. The public square shouldn't be run like a cold, ruthless business. Damn. Jesus, why someone... Oh, it's Ben Thorpe. Shut up, retard. Fuck off. Epic. Guys, here's the article. Let me just link it to you. I mean, I don't have any points of disagreement. I'm a huge Mr. R fan. What can I say? What can I say? I just wanted to share it with more people because I have a platform on here and he doesn't.